I mean, there was like no nexus between the individual and, here, give a classic example. I mean, there's arguments both sides of the fence. We have what they call in Massachusetts and across the nation, La Cosa Nostra. And there were claims that there are La Cosa Nostra members in the Massachusetts criminal justice system.
Yeah, right.
Guess what? There are none in the gang block.
None, no, that's right.
The white gangs in South Boston and East Boston, mobsters,
right.
None of them are in the gang blocks.
That's right.
But all these other poor guys are in the gang blocks.
Right.
And they finally got court orders and they shut this thing down. But this is the problem. This concept that got stuck in Massachusetts was the creation of the National Institution of Corrections. I mean, I should like to think that they didn't intend that effect, but when you don't follow the money, when you put money out there for a specific purpose, they don't go to that institution and say, okay, you want gang money, demonstrate to us, not by putting people in a block and saying, these are gang members, demonstrate that there's a gang. What is a gang? And where's the problem? Document it in order to get the money to deal with that.
To deal with it, right.
And this is the problem. And now what works with the National Institution of Corrections is an organization called the American Correctional Association, which is basically retired correctional people from across the country make up this organization. Some concepts that they have are worthy of paying attention to. But here's the problem. Again, they come in and they do what's called audit the prison. And they examine the prison, look at this and look at that feature, but you know what? They don't talk to the prisoners. They don't find out what the food condition is. They don't find out what the medical condition is. And they don't find out from prisoners the goon squads that are beating prisoners up. In Massachusetts, it's probably a lot more now, but they were paying $7,500 per prison for the American Correctional Association auditing them. And this is the cart before the horse. This is an organization certifying the state. Excuse me, folks. It's the state that certifies organizations.
That's what it should be.
That's what it is in every other field
right.
Other than in corrections. Why? What happens is the National Institution of Corrections wants you to have the American Correctional Association come in and certify your institution. And this game, and it's really a game, is costing a waste of money. I mean, it's a major, major waste of money. I believe we do need a National Institution of Corrections, but we need it to be seriously, seriously modified to do the job that it was originally designed for. It's big business. I mean, the American Correctional Association is in partners with the National Correctional Institution, and it's a scam. I mean, they're coming in and they're certifying institutions that should be brought into court, not certified as functional institutions. They're not. Walpole Prison right now in Massachusetts, 2/3 of the population is in some form of lockdown.
Well, you ain't being rehabilitated there.
Yeah, and you're not doing your job.
Exactly.
And if you say, well, we can't control it, then you definitely are not doing your job, because your job is control. The problem with these organizations is that you'll get lip service that they say, well, you have to include the community and you have to include ex-offenders, and very rarely do you see the inclusion of the community, and very, very rarely do you see the inclusion of ex-offenders. And most of it is, like I said, the American Correctional Association is ex-correctional officials. You don't see ex-offenders in the American Correctional Association.
The new look on the national correction thing is, though, that they are supposed to be headed back in that direction. That the community.
Oh no, they're good. Yes.
Right. The new wave is to change. Well, you don't usually see an organization that. Well, of course, they don't blame themselves. They blame Martinson. Turn around. A 360 degrees turnaround and come back and say, okay,
well,
now we're...
Father, they didn't have a choice. Prisons don't work.
Right, I agree with you.
States can no longer afford prisons. The solution is how do we get out of it? Now, they're pushing the concept reentry.
Right.
All right? And they're throwing money at it. The problem is they're not following through. We have state institutions. Classic example, Massachusetts. We have what was called in Walpole Prison unit manager concept. That meant 2 or 3 cell blocks were controlled and run by a unit manager.
Right.
All right.
That's a phase concept too, right? You went from one to the other.
They did use that too. Didn't work. They tried using it in all kinds of. But they finally come down and said, we're abolishing the unit manager concept. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
After years and years and years of everybody knowing it didn't work, they finally said, it doesn't work. Now, do they lay off the unit managers? No. And I kid you not, folks, listen to me carefully. The unit managers were given a new title. Reentry experts. I kid you not, that's their new title. They are now employed. Ex-unit managers, incompetent unit managers are now becoming reentry experts. Don't know their ass from their elbow.
People who don't know anything about reentry, what's needed, or anything else, were inside the institution all these years doing a failed program of even phasing, and now reentry experts.
Reentry that
how do you get to be I would love to know how they got to be a reentry expert.
But see, but the fault is the National Institution of Corrections. You're going to put money out for reentry. You don't just take the money, throw it into the DOC's lap and say, okay, here, create reentry.
Well, we know that...
You've got to train them. The National Institution of Corrections, before it gives that money to the state, should certify and make damn sure that that state agency understands, not just feedback buzzwords, just feedback the philosophy of NIC. You have to demonstrate that you understand what reentry is, how it works, how do you employ it, how it works inside the prison, how it works outside the prison, then give them the money to do that.
Well, you and I know that's not happening. It's not happening right now. I mean, the big thing is reentry right now, and now they're afraid. They want to get all these people on the streets, get this stuff down, and they have no phasing process that helps. They got the wrong people out there that don't, you're absolutely right, don't know what's going on. They have got no control, and it's like taking the dogs out that you beat on and everything else, open the cage and run, and hope it's going to, well, what are you going to do? You're going to fail, and you're going to make it look like Martinson was right instead of following through.
Oh, no, you could never show Martinson was right. Martinson was dead wrong. And the National Institution, the Bureau of Prison, was dead wrong jumping on that.
Well, we're letting people out who have not, and have no help on the street, have no way to get jobs, have been in prison, and with no type of programs in there, and we're putting them out, and they're going, where are they going? You know where they're going? They're going a halfway, not even a halfway house. They're going, some are going to halfway houses.
They're going through the turnstile back to prison.
Yeah, right. And they're going to homeless shelter. They're going to emergency.
But they're still going back into
and they're
prison.
going back in.
It doesn't work. The National Institution of Corrections is a valid concept. It just misallocates its funds. And most organizations in the street don't know that it exists, don't know what its power is. If you go in and check the statutes, if you go on Google and you type in National Institution of Corrections statutes with an S and hit enter, you'll get the law that creates this organization. And you will see what its duties and responsibilities are, what it's supposed to be doing. If it does those things across the board without jumping in bed with a simple organization like ACA, organizations in the community can take advantage of grant money from the National Institution of Corrections. People don't understand this. If you can come up with a reentry program, a valid reentry program on the street for when prisoners leave prison, you can write the proposal, get the grant money from the National Institution of Corrections, to run that program. But if you're going to do that, make sure you have ex-offenders that have been down that street, that know what the game is, that can say, okay, if you're going to do this for real, this is things that you have to do to get it done.
That's the hard part.
And that's the hard part.
Right now, that's the hard part.